So from here on out, you're going to have access to a Google Docs version of these slides. Those slides are missing a lot of information. You can tell it's missing because there'll be an ellipse, about 3 dots or a series of dots showing that something is missing. It is up to you to go in and fill in that missing information. If you don't do your notes, when we start doing group work, it's going to show definitely that you haven't been doing your studies, and you might let the group down in the process. My best suggestion is still, just as you saw in that video, to download the notes in Word doc if you can, and it's easier to go back and fill in all the missing information. But anyways, let's go ahead and start. So right now we're doing an introduction to the ecosystems. These words, such as environment and environmental science, these are your vocab words. You do have access to the vocab words via the Quizlet that has been attached. When you do your writings, the read and write graphs, the case study, the book work, all that, you're going to be required to use vocab words. Using vocab words shows mastery over that area of the material. Alright, so I won't be reading these always. Like I said, I don't want it to be a bedtime story. But an ecosystem is a particular location on Earth with interacting components including living or biotic components and non-living or abiotic components. These are 2 words that you need to start using. Within the boundaries of what we define as an ecosystem, let's talk briefly about abiotic and biotic. Biotic is anything that is living or was living. 2 examples of biotic would be trees, which are living biotic organisms, and lumber, which is made of biotic materials. The opposite of that is abiotic. Now, the AB prefix is like saying is not. Think about it in terms of saying normal versus abnormal. The ab is a Latin prefix for not. I think it's Latin, it may be Greek. I'll have to go back and check it out. So note that environmental science is different than environmentalism, which is a social movement that seeks to protect the environment through lobbying, activism, and education. Now, these aren't defunct Care Bear kickbacks. This is actually environmentalism. These are some people going out and supporting the environment. This would be an example of environmental science. This is actually a pretty cool field, especially if you like being outside. When you're studying this field, you'll be allowed to go parts of the planet that are off limits to most. The only other people that usually get in there are game wardens or park rangers. And the rest of the society is not allowed in there. Environmental science is a subset of a broader field known as environmental studies. Now, environmental studies is made up of everything you see in that sphere right there. While we're going to be working the sphere on the left from all the angles, we'll be writing the test and doing our writings focusing on the right side of that sphere, which is more true to its name, science fields. Chemistry, toxicology, biology, ecology, economics, you start going into what they like to call social science and humanities. Now, even though it says science, it's not a hard science, it's something called a soft science. Chemistry, physics, those would be hard sciences. In fact, if you were using hard sciences and soft sciences and you are measuring something, hard science, you would say, hey, the measurement is exactly 23.2 grams. Where if you're doing a soft science, maybe the question would be, what do you think? Disapprove or approve? And the measurement could be, I don't know, 4. So hopefully you can tell the difference by looking at this example. So humans and natural systems, we've been changing the Earth for 10,000 and 20,000 years. But in all honesty, we really weren't significantly impacting it until the agricultural revolution, but the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution came at the planet like using a baseball bat on a piñata, where it came so fast that the Earth is having trouble keeping up with these changes, and we're seeing negative effects. The human manipulation of the Earth has been intentional, such as creating a dam which hinders migration of fish and it creates lakes. In fact, in Texas, if I remember right, only 5 of the hundreds of lakes we have are natural lakes. Most of the lakes here in Texas, such as Lake Travis, are man-made due to dams. Now, there are unintentional manipulations of our environment. Best example that you're going to see later is the use of fertilizers. Up around the bread basket, they like to throw fertilizers all over the earth. I mean, that's where we're growing our corn, our wheat, and a lot of other grains. Well, when it does rain, that fertilizer becomes runoff and goes into the water supply. Most of the time, it ends up in the Mississippi River. Now, with all that additional fertilizer, we tend to cause dead zones in those water bodies. Red tide is a good example of a dead zone. And it's unintentional because we really don't try to go out there and cause dead zones. Now, humans and natural systems, hunter-gatherers are people who obtain food by collecting plants and hunting wild animals or collecting the scavenging of animal remains. And over time, it's changing, and it's changing a lot faster nowadays. On the left hand of that image, of that slide, you see what you would think of as hunter and gatherers. People out there with man-made tools that are made out of sticks and stones. But what we've seen change is nowadays hunters and gatherers, such as the image on the right, that came from Nat Geo. Nat Geo went out and found 4 of the remaining hunter-gatherer tribes. And as you can see, this guy is wearing an Izod t-shirt and Nike sandals. So hunter-gatherers is starting to go away, and back then the problem with that was overhunting and extinction of animals. Nowadays, though, we're having a different form of hunter-gatherers, which is causing another problem. As you see all those supplies in the background, in order to create that amount of supplies, we had to start making monocultures. Monocultures are those huge fields of one type of plant. Now, the way that negatively affects everything is when we remove all the other types of plants, anything that lived there and depended on those plants can no longer live there. And we start to create an issue where species cannot be supported and they die off. All right, humans and natural systems, we've been manipulating the environment for a very, very long time. An example of it is when Native Americans used to use fire to capture animals, or on the Great Plains, the fires would keep the trees from encroaching on the plains, which allowed more grass area for buffalo and deer or whatever they hunted in that area. Now this other image, I had to hunt for a while to find this, but I think this is a great example. This picture on the left was from 1890. The one on the right, well, that was from 2010. This is the exact same building in the background. If you can't tell, well, that's the state capitol. Now on the left, this image on the left was taking, if you look on the right side, you'll see 1, 2, 3 black vehicles, and then you'll see a white van. The image on the left was taken where that white van is. In a short time, 100 plus years, we went away from dirt to concrete, the huge buildings. I just wanted to show you that what we're doing now to the earth is occurring quicker and at a higher rate of speed than it did before. Hence the analogy of taking a baseball bat to a piñata. Now, it's not always a bad thing. We are just as good as finding solutions as we are creating problems. So we're going to make a hard switch real quick, and we're going to start talking about community ecology. For example, right here, we'll start out with symbiotic relationships, such as this elephant and a great egret. Now, this relationship between them benefits both. Do you think any animal is really going to try to mess with that bird when it's sitting on an elephant? Probably not. But what does the elephant benefit out of this? Those egrets like to eat a lot of insects, and those elephants don't exactly have the arms to reach back and fend off themselves from biting insects. So what happens is one provides protection from predators, the other one provides protection from biting and stinging insects that may carry diseases. Here's another picture. This one, we're going from a symbiotic relationship to competition. Competition is the struggle of individuals to obtain shared limited resources. For example, that chubby groundhog and those little birds. Now there's only one resource here, and there's a competition. Now, why competition does not mean predation, and it does not always direct in a result loss of life, it definitely contributes to it. As that groundhog becomes stronger and is able to take more of the food, it's leaving less for the other animals. And over time, those animals become weaker and tend to die out. I want to point something out. In all the slides you're going to see in your copy, in these video copies, you're going to see this red box down here. It says AP exam tip. Purposely left those in there. Definitely read those, okay? So competition for a limiting resource can lead to resource partitioning. I think the best example I can think of for this is football and soccer. Their resource are those fields in the stadium, all right? Now they both can't go out there and play at one time, but you can do resource partitioning by saying, hey, this group is going to play in the fall and this group is going to play in the spring. That way you separate the resource and no one really suffers. Here's another example of it. This one is with wolves and coyotes. One strategy is temporal resource partitioning, a process in which two species utilize the same resource but at different times. On the bottom, it has another example. Black grama grass has shallow roots that extend over a large area to capture water, while tar bush sends roots deep into the ground to tap deep sources of water. Now, what they don't point out on that slide, on that second example, is they have to be in the same area and next to each other. Grama grass, if it's grown in Australia, and then tar bush, if it's grown in Africa, they're not going to affect each other if they're on different continents. So when you think of this competition and resource partitioning, it has to be in the same exact area. Next, a third method of reducing resource overlap is by morphological resources. For example, these birds were originally all the same species. And over time, they started to develop different phenotypes, which allowed them to gain access to the food more easily or different types of foods. This is known as speciation. This typically happens very slowly, perhaps in the order of 1 to 3 new species per year worldwide. The average rate at which species go extinct over the long term is referred to as background extinction rate. Now, background extinction rate doesn't always mean that animal just ceased to exist. These all came from the same family at one time, but as speciation occurred, that original species disappeared, and that would have been background extinction. A lot of what we hear nowadays is extinction that's occurring at high rates of speeds, such as rhinos. People hunt rhinos for their horns. Polar bears is a good example. They're not changing, they're actually dying off at a high rate. Predation and parasitism, all 4 examples on here are examples you need to know. I do have this video on parasitoid. You need to watch this. I'm going to put this in our helpful videos files. It's absolutely disgusting, but it's interesting to watch. What happens is a fly will go lay its eggs inside a worm, and that worm will continue to live. Now it starts to shut down its immune support system, but the creature continues to live while these eggs are hatching in it. What you'll see later is the worms are hanging out of it while it's still going around, crawling and trying to eat. And last but not least, we got herbivory. I'm pretty sure you know what that is. Think about cows, horses. And mutualism, which is coral reefs, lichens. This is where 2 creatures support each other. The issue is if one of them dies off, it negatively affects the other. You need to highlight that, and that'll help you defer which is which. All right, last but not least, Leafcutter ants. These are interesting because they don't actually eat the leaves. What they